All right, let's go ahead and kick it off. Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Wishart, a Global Business Development Lead for Observability at AWS, primarily focused on open source. And I'll let him introduce himself more appropriately when we get to the session. But I'm here with my colleague, Michael Hasenblas, who is our technical lead for observability and overall just industry expert as relates to open source and Prometheus-based tools. So really excited to have him here. The purpose of today, for those of you that are just waking up, we are looking to cover an exciting product launch that Michael has led around the new metric observability experience with CloudWatch, primarily for OTel-based telemetry with metrics. And so a couple housekeeping items. As you've entered, you are muted. Feel free to comment in the chat if you have any questions, and then we'll look to call on you as the webinar progresses, and we will try out letting you unmute yourself to answer your questions. And of course, we hold the right to proactively mute you and move on if we need to, given the time available for everyone. So really appreciate your time here and really appreciate you all being here, and let's get started. So what we'd love to do today is just provide a quick recap of some of the observability trends we're seeing in the market. I'm sure this will be of no surprise to the vast majority of you. And then we'd love to do an introduction to our new OpenTelemetry experience with metrics within CloudWatch, highlight how this makes CloudWatch further differentiated for customers. Then get a little bit deeper into some of the components of the architecture. And for those of you that might be using Prometheus, we'd love to give some guidance on how you should think about leveraging CloudWatch metrics versus Amazon managed Prometheus. And typically we go into a deep dive, but instead we'll pass the baton to Michael H to go into a demo and give you an appropriate review of the product. So I'm sure this resonates with a lot of folks. But in general, we are seeing the following trends. One is growth in open source technologies. We see over 70% of customers use either Prometheus or OpenTelemetry based tools. And in parallel, customers are really looking to see how they can consolidate their disparate observability tools into one platform. So that way they can have logs, metrics, and traces in one place. Thirdly, as customers look to modernize into containers or serverless technologies, and now with AI, they are seeing higher levels of cardinality with data. And lastly, customers just having to deal with managing those multiple tools, which is why they're seeking this one platform. They need help either managing their third-party tool costs, or for those of you that are self-managing open source tools, it becomes quite cumbersome to self-manage it and deal with the overhead of managing the underlying infrastructure or having your employees do the cumbersome work of management as opposed to focusing on your core business. And while we're speaking, for those of you in the audience, feel free to comment in the chat if there's other major trends you're seeing or if any of these trends resonate with you. It is curious to hear what's top of mind for customers. Particularly when we think of challenges, I think this is in some ways a regurgitation of the trends we're seeing, because with all these trends, they come up with new challenges. As customers are moving to modern architectures, it's really challenging to handle that high cardinality data, especially as you're dealing with EKS workloads. So dealing with a tool that can handle that is very helpful. Thirdly, as you're trying to correlate metrics, logs, and traces together, not being able to have appropriate context as you're going from infrastructure to application telemetry. Thirdly, customers want to use open source tools. However, a lot of existing tools don't have out-of-the-box compatibility with the open standards, which can make it further challenging to aggregate all your information together. And lastly, this ties to having multiple tools. When you have a different tool for logs, metrics, and traces, as well as potential costs of exporting data to those tools, it can be quite prohibitive for your budgets. And for those of you that have to own a budget and manage your business, this can be quite prohibitive in terms of hitting your goals. And are there any other challenges that the audience is feeling as relates to observability? Feel free to comment in the chat. Like I said, we really want to know what's top of mind for you, especially as Michael goes into his demo. It's great to hear what are some of the issues that people face on a day-to-day basis with observability. All right. So, given the market trends and some of the challenges that we're seeing, we launched a new metric observability experience within CloudWatch. For those of you that we've had a chance to connect with during the public preview, which is during the month of April, and so you still have 2 days to try it out for free. We launched the new under formerly project named Zeus, the new CloudWatch Metrics Observability Experience. And what this does is it allows you to better aggregate OpenTelemetry metrics within CloudWatch, and then you can query those with the popular PromQL query language. And so what this does is we hope to make CloudWatch easier to use by aligning with those OpenTelemetry standards that a lot of you have increasingly become comfortable with. Thirdly, being able to aggregate those OpenTelemetry metrics with vended metrics, more easily within the CloudWatch platform, and being able to have those out-of-the-box insights and alarming with PromQL that allow you to get business value from that telemetry data. And for those of you that are avid fans of CloudWatch, you'll know that at the end of last year we launched the unified data store for logs. And so with this new metric observability experience, it provides another data store for metrics. So that way you can have that central observability data store for your logs and metrics in a single place. And I think that's going to be quite powerful, not just from an observability perspective, but if you have plans to deploy SRE agents like AWS DevOps agent or other third-party agents, being able to use this data store for your logs and metrics can be quite helpful for your AI operation needs. And lastly, being able to unify your infrastructure and application metrics together is also a value add. All right, so I see some chatter in the chat box.
That's just me.
Oh, terrific. Okay. Oh, perfect. All right. Thank you, Michael, for keeping the audience engaged here. All right. So, so just to recap, how does this make CloudWatch a differentiated option for your observability needs? One is, alignment with open source industry standards with PromQL, OTLP, and OTel. Being able to support high cardinality workloads. So for those of you that have EKS workloads and need support for up to 250 million active time series, this experience out of the box today can be a great option. And of course, if you need higher levels of active time series, let us know. As you can imagine, we're looking to always increase the limits that we support with our tools. So please keep that in mind. Being able to access your OTel metrics alongside your vendor metrics in a single platform. In terms of cost efficiency, we're always looking to we always see ways for customers to optimize their observability spending. So if cost is a concern for you, then the new metric experience with CloudWatch, we're very excited about the potential for it to provide that cost-effective option for you. And lastly, being able to have your metrics and logs in a single data store is also helpful.
I think we have a question from Lionel. Register. I'm not entirely sure. Register for what? Could you?
Perfect. So let's see here. We have a couple questions. All right, Lionel. After this, feel free. We'll send our email information after the call, or while Michael H is doing his demo, I'll send you some information about the launch, and just to get you access to the onboarding experience, so we can get you in the know ASAP.
Thanks, Michael.
Mm-hmm. And then plan for ECS support from TR. So right away, it's out of the box for EKS, and we're not able to confirm or deny anything that's roadmap related in these public forums. However, as you can imagine, we're pretty excited that we can use this new CloudWatch metric experience across AWS services very, very quickly. And then, and lastly, yes, we'll look to publish this presentation online to YouTube for public distribution. And for those of you that registered, we will be sure to, share this online through email. All right, real quick, just a high level overview of like how the architecture looks. As Michael said, this will work with all AWS services, and with the OTel collector, you'll be able to aggregate not just AWS resources but also non-AWS resources together in this CloudWatch experience, and then also being able to leverage the OTLP ingestion that will give you access to the OTel telemetry. And within the CloudWatch experience, we have a query studio, which Michael will get into. And then you can use that alongside other platforms to visualize and analyze this data, like Amazon Managed Grafana, in case you have preference for Grafana-based dashboards, as well as CloudWatch dashboards too. Awesome. Oh, nice. Thank you, Selva, for the question there. And just to tie off some common questions we hear, for those of you that might be using Amazon Managed Prometheus or considering Amazon Managed Prometheus, this isn't an either or, it's they're complementary. And this is the general guidance of how I see customers, how we would advise customers when they're looking to decide between the two. For those of you that want a more fully managed SaaS-like experience and want to have your logs, metrics, and traces in a single place, we do have the CloudWatch platform for those types of use cases. And so if you really want to lean into using CloudWatch as your central platform, then this new metric observability experience is a great option for you. For those of you that have a strong preference for open source based tools like Managed Prometheus or our Amazon OpenSearch experience, and you need higher levels of cardinality, that's well above 500 million active time series today, or if you're self-hosting Prometheus or Mimir, we usually find that guiding customers towards Amazon Managed Prometheus is typically the better fit. These are rough guidelines, not dead fast rules. And Michael H, feel free to comment on this too.
Yeah, just two quick notes. In fact, in AMP, in Amazon Managed Service for Prometheus, we currently support a 1 billion active time series. So it's not wrong, right? Over 500, but in fact, we support 1 billion. So if you need that, and I would, in a nutshell, describe it like if you really, really care that you have AWS managed open source. So, in case of AMP, we're using Cortex, for example. OpenSearch, obviously, uses OpenSearch. Then that's the way to go, right? If your focus is on open standards, right? If you say I want to use PromQL, I want to use OpenTelemetry or TLP, then we've got you covered with CloudWatch metrics. In a nutshell.
And perfect. And then for a question with Craig, for viewing metrics in Managed Grafana or self-managed Grafana, Michael, feel free to correct me, but for Amazon Managed Grafana, and I believe with self-managed Grafana, you can use both CloudWatch or Managed Prometheus as a data source for those dashboards. And Selva, let's see here. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Michael. And then for Selva, could you elaborate more on what you mean by 500 million active time series?
Yeah.
Michael, could you speak to that?
So the current preview limitations, which are actually not really technically enforced, because the only limitation that we have in there is every 10 minutes, 1 million time series. So you can do the maths. You could get up to 1 billion in a week or so. But in GA, this will change, right? As we just said, AMP out of the box, right? If you need to land 1 billion right out of the box as fast as you can ingest today, then AMP is what you should be using, right? With GA, once we go GA with the CloudWatch metrics, with what we're talking about today, which is currently in preview, which means you're not paying for it, and we're gathering feedback, has currently this soft limit, I would say, of 250 million, right? Which definitely will change when we GA, or very likely will change when we go GA, and will increase over time, right? We're not stopping with 250 million active time series in CloudWatch, obviously. That should be clear that this is not the upper limit. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so it looks like there is something we can do today which should address most of the use cases. But if we are already running at very high scale, you are recommending us to use AMP, correct?
At least for the time being, yes.
Yeah, got it.
And then Tom asked, what services currently support managed Prometheus? Michael, if you're able to comment on that one.
Are you asking what services AMP is integrated? I'm not sure our currently support. What do you mean?
Maybe one way
in
to
what
answer
direction?
yeah, maybe one way to answer it is that with AMP, you know, you can use AMP to aggregate metrics from all AWS resources as well as non-AWS resources. The one caveat is with AMP, we did launch an agentless collector for EKS as well as an agentless collector for MSK. So if you want a more seamless monitoring experience for EKS and MSK workloads, AMP has that experience.
It's only technically limited to MSK. It's really VPC based. So, you know, we have a blog post, I can find that out, where our solution architects describe how you can use it for ECS, for example, or really anything VPC based. And the agentless component there is really rather than you having to, you know, scale and maintain and patch and run a collector, an OpenTelemetry collector, you essentially just give us a scrape config and we discover where all the targets are and ingest it into AMP.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And yes, Jane, we'll share the recording afterwards via email. Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry, quick one. So if you could share links to those architect reference that you talked about, I appreciate it because
sure.
I'm looking at
we can pack that.
ECS and Fargate. Thanks.
Yeah, we can pack that into when we share the deck and the recording. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Totally.
Perfect. And of course, and I'll share my email with this group too if you want to proactively reach out. All right, we'll skip this slide. So yeah, we'll go into the demo for Michael. So Michael, the floor is yours. Thank you all for reviewing the presentation, and we'll share a recording afterwards. But I think we'll go into the meat of the discussion with Michael H.
Sounds good. Let me share my screen. Thank you for the context. Allow multiple presenters. You already stopped, so yeah, that's fine. Firefox. How about that? Looking good?
Yes.
Can you see my? Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, we can see your architecture.
Now, I don't see the chat anymore, so I will rely heavily on Michael to direct me here a little bit. Who of you on the call knows the upstream OpenTelemetry demo? So there is the OTel demo.
Yeah, I'm pretty aware.
Part of OpenTelemetry. Yeah. Anyone else familiar? Otherwise, I'm just spending a little bit of time to explain what that is. That's not what we built. That's just using upstream. What we built here to demonstrate the power of what now is not just traces and logs, but also metrics through OTLP ingest, is the so-called OTel demo, the game, which takes the OTel demo. Again, this is the upstream work, right? That you can just deploy locally or wherever you want, in this case in EKS, and then runs an OpenTelemetry collector in the same EKS cluster, which is auto mode, meaning, you know, it scales as it needs. There's Carpenter down there. You don't need to worry about, you know, having too many nodes over permission in any form. And then all the telemetry signal types, metrics, traces, and logs that come from any of those 15 services in the OTel demo are collected by that OTel collector, which, as I said, runs as a deployment effectively in the EKS cluster and ingests it into CloudWatch, right? And then what I will show you now in great detail is this black box down here. This is OTel demo, the game OTDT, right? So it gamifies the OTel demo, injects or introduces failure scenarios. There are around 15, I believe, that are part of the OTel demo itself, where various things, you know, just disable certain things, or it simulates a network issue or memory pressure or whatnot. And then we added a few more. I think we now have over 40 different scenarios. And your task is to, based on the telemetry signals, figure out what's going wrong and fix it. Right? That's essentially the idea. Any questions on the OTel demo itself? Let me see if I can see the chat. Anything there? Any questions so far?
No questions yet. And Michael, do you want me to share the link to your YouTube video too?
Yes, please. If you could, hang on. Let me share the place. If you want to do it yourself, you can go here takes you, EKS mostly, so 15, 20 minutes. It just ramps up the EKS cluster auto mode, then uses Helm chart to deploy the OTel demo, and then you would run the demo OTDG, the game that I'm showing you, either locally, what I'm currently doing, or you can also deploy it as a web app within the EKS cluster. You have it anyways. And if you don't want to do that, you can just look at or watch the video that we recorded. Some 20 minutes walks you through everything in detail. And I think Michael will share that on the chat as well.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll go ahead and share it.
Thank you. That's the demo. And as I said, right, the OTel demo itself, it simulates a kind of shop e-commerce site, which, has all the telemetry related products in there, and you have many different things that you can do there. It's not really important what goes on there, just so that this is the OTel demo. Okay, great. Now, this is essentially, if you think of it, right, this is the source of all signals, specifically, as I said, metrics, right? We're interested in metrics. Just to give you an idea how that would look like if we just take the metric side of things, so all these 15 services, most of them emit metrics. And I just used here CloudWatch itself. So if you are looking for an in-console, an AWS console experience, you could do something like that. Like, how did I get there? Well, there's a new thing called Query Studio in DC preview, right? That's also in preview, part of what we launched here. But before we get there to the Query Studio, I want to highlight one thing, and that is in the settings, you want to enable this one here. Enable OTel enrichment for AWS metrics. That little toggle here, that does the heavy lifting that if you are currently using self-managed Prometheus, where you would need to export the CloudWatch metrics, right, through get metric data, metric streams, and then re-ingest into Prometheus or Cortex or Mimir using remote write protocol, out of the box for you. You just need to say, yep, I want that, and then all the wonderful AWS-vended metrics come in OTel enriched, and you can readily use them to query them with PromQL. How do you do that? Glad you asked. You go to Query Studio. Query Studio is our in AWS console experience for currently PromQL or the already established SQL, our SQL. And in the future, you can imagine you probably would be able to query other telemetry signal types here as well, but let's focus on metrics. So you can, use the query builder, click something together here, what service, okay, this or that. Or if you're more familiar with PromQL itself, you just switch over and then directly write PromQL, something like average of blah, blah, blah. If you're using Grafana Explorer, you probably are familiar with that already. Pretty similar to this. I just wanted to show you that, from here, you could then literally add it to a dashboard. That's literally what I did to build the dashboard that you saw here in the beginning, right? I just picked a few exemplary metrics from the demo that, let me go back to the dashboard. Here, for example, HTTP responses, here red metrics, errors per services, here ads from the ads service, what are that, random or targeted, and then memory usage from all the services there, right? And each of them I just went through from the Query Studio and just said add to this dashboard, and then you can have that dashboard there. The question was already earlier there, can I use that also in Grafana? Yes, you can. So you can simply go to Grafana, manage Grafana. You can use ours, or you can just use, you can also use OpenSearch, has also PromQL support, or your self-managed Grafana, and add this as a Prometheus data source. So this is not CloudWatch, this is a Prometheus data source because it exposes the PromQL APIs. I'll pause here for a moment. Any questions so far? So did you ask, you deploy OTel in your EKS cluster?
Michael,
yes, you configure it to send logs. It's not just logs, it's all three. So it's metrics, traces, and logs. And then you can access the OTel metrics. In this case, I've been focusing it with PromQL. Yes, that's exactly it. So I mean, you were mixing metrics and logs, but yes, that's it.
Michael, just a quick question. So,
yes,
because these are pushed as OTel metrics and stored in CloudWatch, retrieval through Grafana will be through a Prometheus data source, but
correct.
within CloudWatch dashboards themselves, it will still be a CloudWatch data source, native one.
In CloudWatch, yes, I know what you think. Yes, it's native.
Got it.
Yes. It's not what you might be referring to, thinking of where you have to, run the Lambda in your own account, and then no, it's native. Yes.
Right.
In the CloudWatch console, it is native. Yes. All right. That was just to show you we do have an experience in the console, but we know that many customers, like to consume all these signals somewhere else. So, one way to go about it is indeed what we did here, and that is, using CloudWatch through the OTLP ingest, metrics, logs, and traces. So again, we're now here, right, between this red as the source of truth, the online store for metrics, traces, and logs, and what we're looking here is at this black box here, right? This is the game. And in the game, you see first and foremost the actual 15 services that the OTel demo comprises. And if you're not familiar with the OTel demo, what I would first say, maybe have a look at them, right? Like, it's like, okay, this is written in Java. There's a quick summary, and if you want to dive deep, you just click on the docs and you get to the upstream description of it. And you see, there are pretty much everything in there, right? Go and .NET and Kotlin and PHP and Python and Rust and what have you. The second part, and currently I'm clicking, but I usually, when I use it, I use the keyboard shortcuts because I'm much faster there. You can bring it up with H or question mark, and you see all the various functionality listed there. I'm going to walk you through all of that. So switching over from services to telemetry, we look at the telemetry. This is what the OpenTelemetry collector who's running in the EKS cluster is configured. So this is essentially this OTel collector that you see here in the gray box, right? That's the pipelines that are defined in that OTel collector, right? So we have a metrics pipeline, we have a traces pipeline, we have a logs pipeline. Metrics pipeline uses OTLP. I come to the span metrics in a moment. Then has a transform processor and a batch processor, and then eventually has an exporter, an OTLP exporter into the newly launched OTLP endpoint. Traces very similar, logs very similar, but we're focusing on metrics here. And there you see the span metrics. This is not the best visualization. So if you want to dive deep, click on that OTel bin, and there you see, how it actually looks like, visually nicely lined up. And there you see actually how that looks like, right? What does this span metrics connector do? It connects, as the name suggests, two pipelines, the traces pipeline with the metrics pipeline. And what it does is it derives metrics from spans. Sounds complicated. Actually, it's very simple. And that is, not all of those services do indeed expose metrics or provide metrics, but I wanted to have metrics for all of them. However, on the other hand, all of them do emit spans, which means with this span metrics connector, right? This thing that sits between the is from the traces pipeline an exporter, and from the metrics pipeline a receiver. I can magically create the metrics, the red metrics. It's limited to red metrics, but it's something for all of the services, even if they themselves don't do that. So that's a wonderful way how to generate metrics, even if they might not be instrumented to do so or whatever. It might be that you have a legacy app that you don't have the source code to, and you still want metrics, and you could use auto instrumentation to emit spans and then derive red metrics. Red, in case you are not that familiar with it, now I'm pressing the R button. R key stands for request error duration. So these three golden signals here. What's the rate of the requests? So how many requests are coming in per minute or second? What is the error rate? How many errors does a certain service experience? And what is the duration or latency, sometimes called, in terms of how long does it take for the synchronous request to complete. And if you just click or hit R, then you get all of the services you can filter. Like I'm only interested in add, so I click at add on add, so it's limited to add. And then you can obviously go back in time and say, I want to have 6 hours, I want to have 24 hours, whatever, right? That shouldn't surprise you too much. So that's R, the red metrics. The other thing that you can, and we haven't even started playing yet, if you remember. So there is some. That's great that you see that there's an actual.
And Michael,
this is actual. Yes.
Oh, just to confirm. So in the chat we had a couple questions. Want to make sure that I might.
Oh, sorry.
It might have been covered.
Thank you.
No worries. Want to make sure you were in the flow. So while there was a bit of a transition, just want to highlight 2 questions. One from Tom and then one from Didier. To just confirm that if you're able to speak to those.
Is there integration with ClusterKida or other auto-scaling add-ons? Currently, nothing out of the box, but please do let us know what for your use case, what you need. So we could certainly, very likely, still make it into the GA. If you let us know either here or afterwards through email, what exactly your use case is and what you need in terms of the specific add-ons. I'm assuming you will be doing the usual HPA or whatever. And want to see something there. So currently not in preview, but definitely on the roadmap. So either you deploy Prometheus Export on your EKS nodes or you deploy OTel. So the exporter is a tad an overloaded term in this context, right? Because in Prometheus land, where I'm originally from, I spent with Prometheus for more than 10 years now. An exporter is something that runs and turns whatever into Prometheus, like exposes a /metrics, a target that then can be scraped. In OTel land, if you look at an OTel collector, for example, an exporter is this last thing in the pipeline that can ingest into, for example, OTLP endpoint or into, using EMF into CloudWatch, the older version. So I'm interpreting your question now in the way that for the majority of sources, be it the Kubernetes control plane in EKS, the data plane, be it kube state metrics or from the kubelet, whatever, those are all already there, right? The Prometheus metrics are already there, and that's what if you look at AMP out of the box, the AMP collector will just scrape by default. So generating, exposing these Prometheus metrics in general is not necessary for you to do manually, other than your application, right? On application level, yes, right? OTel in this context, really, it's middleware, right? It's this thing in the middle that figures out where all these metrics and logs and traces sit, then process them at the edge. Some, it might filter, it might sample, it might, drop PI data in logs, it might do other things, and then ingest it into, in this case, right, the ingest is literally all into CloudWatch, right? The metrics go into OTLP metrics endpoint, etc., etc. Does that Prometheus at app level? Yes, exactly. So there you have the choice, right? It very much depends on your strategy. If you want, if you're only interested in metrics, then sure, you can simply use Prometheus instrumentation. For a more general approach, I would recommend, or we recommend, to use directly the native OpenTelemetry SDKs, because then you're covered for traces, metrics, and logs. There is, depending on whom you ask, some people say that it's better to like if you have a holistic approach, if you want all the current 3 telemetry signal types, logs, metrics, and traces, and going forward also profiles, which probably will be stable by end of year in upstream, you're probably better off directly investing this additional work. But if you have already instrumented everything with Prometheus instrumentation SDKs, you're good, right? You don't need to change anything. Is that okay? So no need to add all to Prometheus with OTel. You will get all. Yes, exactly. That's the gist. So now what I did here, I'll do it again just so that you see it. I press M, which is the service map M, which essentially is a service map showing you the flow, and then has 3 functions. Again, for each of those docs, you already saw it just links to the upstream docs. Then it has the traces. Just spend a minute so that you see, what you have here, where you can look at the specific span, and then you see the attributes, the attached attributes, the OTel attributes there that were ingested and then or enriched by the OTel collector. And then you can look at the logs and filter or whatever here. That's not what we're talking about, right? That's just as an aside. You will need it in the game though, because otherwise you only see half of it. But that's essentially it. Last thing before we start playing is K, which opens in the bottom half this kubectl interactive explorer, where you can just do simple kubectl commands. Kubectl get, for example, get all, just lists all the resources in default namespace. Right? If you, I don't know, say -n OTel demo. If I can type, then I get all the resources in the OTel demo namespace. That's just, for certain cases, you probably need to look a little bit closer. You can do a kubectl get or a kubectl log, so it's limited. You can't do too much harm there. Okay, that's it. That's all. One more thing, cost. So C is cost. One of the most important things to consider is always what are the observability costs in relation to the overall costs. And that's why we wrote the cost breakdown in that sense, right? So last day, let's look at the last 7 days to have a little bit more context there. Overall, the demo, what you see here, right? OTel demo, and obviously also the resources, OTel collector, etc., cost us 98, so close to $100, and the observability piece 5%. So you see that metrics currently 0 because we're in preview, so there will be something there. But it's 5% or so. So that's pretty reasonable, right? 5% observability cost. Okay, now we are really ready to play. So let's play. It starts with injecting chaos, and if you look at this top level bar here, it says phase observing. So you're now in the observing phase, right? You see when it opens up the red metrics and the service map, you see, okay, something is going on. I open up the service map to see, okay, something around ads. Now I could, go into traces and look at the traces, etc. I'm not going to do that. I'm lazy, and I'm just saying, hey, give me a hint, right? I don't want to guess. Give me a hint. So the game gives me a hint that the ad service is extremely slow and CPU usage is near the limit. No resource limits were recently changed. Okay, any hints? Does anyone on the call have a hypothesis that I should enter here? You can either do guided, so you could say, it's the ad service, and a resource pressure and whatever, or you can do it free text. Does anyone have an input here? Does anyone think they know what's going on here, what the actual failure is? We can look at the metrics if we wanted to. What is it? Ad services. Okay. Goes up here. The duration jumps. I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna say the resource limit is misconfigured. I don't know. I'm really bad at that game. I'm bad at playing. Let's see what it says. So the LLM chat says 30 out of 100 points. Okay. What does it say? It's a feature flag of the OTel demo. Okay. So yeah. Okay. Maybe not the most exciting one. It's an easy one. So okay. Next step is proceed to remediation. Here you could directly on the command line go and go through these steps and fix it. Or if you say like, okay, I'm only interested in the investigation part, but not fixing it, just say auto remediate, and it goes and does that all in the background. And then we just need to wait until the ad service is fine again. So now we're in round 2, and then we would do it again and say like, give me a hint, etc., etc. No red metrics, site works. I have no idea. No idea. Help. I have no idea. Hopefully I get 0 points here. Let's see. Yes, 0. Good. Medium killed recommendation service. Okay, so it killed the recommendation service. Yeah, that's why no correct recommendations were there. Fine. Auto remediate again. And then, I would do that. There are 5 rounds in total. And, with every round, what you're supposed to do, like if you're serious about playing that, you would literally look at, okay, here, somewhere here, and I'm looking at the traces, and I'm looking at the logs. I'm trying to figure out what is going on. And then, at some point in time, I will, based on the hint and my knowledge, I will probably find it. Multiple services are done. I don't know. Earthquake. I don't know. I have no idea. I can't even type. I just want to get to the end of the round so that you can see. Okay, I really suck. No problem. Okay, one more round. And once you're done, I'll just click through because I really don't care. Blah. Then you get the overall judgment or the overall summary. It's really powerful. It gives you a graphic interface. Yeah, so just to be clear, this is just an ad hoc interface to show you how you can consume stuff, right? Like I wouldn't I wouldn't say that you should be using this or building this for your own use cases. It's just whatever. It's just a simple way how to demonstrate how things could be used. Okay, so now we are done. The end of that game, I only scored 6%. Oh my god, I really need to up my game. You can download it as PDF and show to your manager, or put it on the wall, or play again. At any point in time, you can always like if you're in the game and you say like, I don't want it anymore, you can click exit. Because again, this is real stuff. This is not a simulation, right? Like this is literally currently going on in the cluster, right? So if you leave it in an undefined state, then the OTel demo is broken. So you always want to, exit, and then it cleans up everything and you have a clean slate again. The one thing that I didn't mention that I do want to highlight is there is one more thing, and that is P, which is the PromQL Explorer. And that also reminds you, that's the thing that I showed you in the beginning, to enable the OTel enrichment, because then you can query both the vended metrics and the application level metrics that come from the OTel demo in one place. So we have a couple of examples there. For example, let's use the last hour as a time range memory usage. So that's just PromQL that gets sent and then visualized. Or you have to request those. By the way, those queries that I have here, it's exactly the same what you see here on the dashboards, right? It's exactly the same underlying PromQL queries. And then you can switch and can say, okay, this is live data. This is literally live coming in, and it will pick the right appropriate visualization. So if you have a histogram, then it will obviously, use a heat map to show that. Yeah, that's essentially it. Let me just double check. We did cost breakdown, kubectl, service map, PromQL, red. Yeah, we did everything. We played. I suck at the game, but at least I hope you got a feeling for what's in there and what the actual power of CloudWatch with all the OTLP and PromQL now is. Questions?
Amazing. Thank you, Michael. I'm going to share, and of course we can stay here for questions, but I'm going to share momentarily a link for feedback on this event. And of course, this helps us, understand how what we're doing well and where we can improve. So let me just quickly pull up the link and I'll share it in the chat.
Michael, I have a question.
Yes, please unmute yourself, and maybe if you can first just say your name so that we always have a
Selva. Yeah. So this is primarily CloudWatch metrics, right? And I know we talked about OTel collector. We talked about the integrated experience. Is the demo that you showed is possible in CloudWatch natively, where if we use the ADOT or OTel collector to push metrics logs and traces directly to the X-ray endpoint?
Sure, you could use the ADOT collector. I haven't. The reason why I used the an OCB build, so a custom OCB build one is because the ADOT collector, which I own as a product manager, doesn't contain the spend metrics connector. So I wouldn't be able to do that demo with
I see. So basically, this will allow the span metric processor to emit span derived metrics as custom metrics into CloudWatch directly, rather than
So I mean, I wouldn't confuse in principle with this demo, right? I did it for this demo. I used the span metrics connector between the traces and the metrics pipeline for one reason only, and that is not every service, not all of the 15 services in the OTel demo provide metrics, right? And if not all of them do that, then I can't really query all of them, right? I can't do the red metrics for all of them, etc. And that's why I thought, okay, using the span metrics connector between span traces and metrics pipeline is a very simple way to derive these red metrics and make everything queryable alongside with the AWS-vended metrics. It's just to show off, to demonstrate the functionality. I wouldn't get hung up on that.
And you, in the second slide, we talked about CloudWatch and then AMP, right? AMP is mostly a scrape-based model. Like, I could be wrong.
No, nothing to do.
It's also remote, right?
What Michael mentioned is the AMP collector. That's our agentless offering. That is where essentially you can think of, we run the OTel collectors in our accounts, and the interface. If you're familiar with, there is a similar agentless offering in EKS with FluentBit, where you have FluentBit, I can't remember how it's called, but you essentially provide FluentBit with the config, and the EKS team runs these FluentBit agents in their accounts. So the interface is just, that's why we call it agentless, right? You don't see any telemetry agents running. You don't need to worry about it. You don't need to scale them, etc. But that's just for the collection part. AMP itself is just remote write, right? It has a remote write endpoint, and you can just remote write into it. Nothing to it. It's push. It's not. It doesn't scrape. It doesn't scrape itself.
I'm good actually. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Francesco, our biggest issue with CloudWatch metrics is the cost of get metric calls generated by Datadog to ingest. Yes, this is exactly why I both Michael and Michael we both highlighted this you don't need to do that anymore, right? So now the only thing you need to do is you enable. You remember when I'm happy to show it again. It's in the config of CloudWatch. You just say enable OTel telemetry, OTel enabled vended metrics. That's the official name. And then you're good. Does that make sense?
Okay, I think you got the thumbs up, so I think you're good there.
Okay.
And then Didi asked if there's like a natural language which helps provide the PromQL syntax. Does CloudWatch have the natural language capabilities in it?
Currently, yes and no. So it exists for logs. I know we enabled it for some time for metrics for SQL, right? Not for PromQL. I would argue it is useful, right? It makes sense. The question is, would you as a human, like either you're really, really, really into PromQL, right? You're SRE DevOps type and you're the person who defines dashboards or alerts or whatever. By the way, we also support PromQL now in CloudWatch Alarm. So if you want to use that rather than the previous method, you can do that. But then you very likely already know PromQL, right? Then you speak PromQL. If not, then learning PromQL, I'm not sure, right? So in that case, the use case would be, I just say, give me all requests, all error requests, and then it translates them into a PromQL query. The question then is, in such an environment, is such a setup, do I really care about actual PromQL, or am I just talking with a in a chat interface, right? Where the artifact that is intermittently created, which is PromQL, is really like, I don't really care about PromQL, right? I care about the outcome. And then it would be handled by an LLM, which in PromQL case is pretty good. In my experience, the output there is pretty reliable. TR
And
asks,
then, yeah, I can
explain
speak
how.
to Francesco's. So Francesco's questions about using this as Datadog. I don't have visibility into that partnership. However, Datadog's a valuable partner of ours, and so I'm sure they're having some discussions there. So I would say we probably can't speak to it since any discussions are probably under NDA. So I would say, Francesco, let us get back to you or ping your AWS rep, because we always do things based on customer input. So if you're able to notify your AWS contact about this, that would be the best way to get clarity on that. But I'm sure there's discussions happening since Datadog's a high value partner of ours.
Yeah. And the same is true for TR, right? It's literally, this is currently still depending on the third-party vendor, mostly metric streams. Some are also using get metric data. But this is like outside of what we've shown you here, right? Like this is what I've shown you here is you're consuming it in AWS, either on the CloudWatch console, Grafana, or a bespoke UI, if you wish, a bespoke experience. But you're not consuming it in a third party. So same applies here to TR's question, really.
I have one question.
Yes.
This is first time I'm doing. Yeah. How do we, if we have a PCI data, do we have to worry about PCI or compliance, health compliance data? We have to scrub it and.
Is the question, do you have to worry about ingesting it or what?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're familiar with the AWS telemetry pipeline. I can show you a quick glance at it. You might know we launched that in re:Invent last. Let me share my Firefox again.
There is one of the service it provides to clean up those data in AWS, but
so
maybe we can run that before.
There is a sorry, not log management. Where is it? Ingestion. Sorry, it's up there. The official or public label of that is ingestion, right? We internally call it ATP, AWS telemetry pipeline, where you essentially say, here are the data sources, here are the rules, here are the pipelines, right? And as you can see here, right, that's beta. It's currently in beta, so not yet publicly available, but you can do that, right? Like for logs, it's GA, right? For logs, you can do that, right? You can literally have a whatever source and then say, hey, scrub that, you just follow what we have here, whatever the rules are. You can filter for PII data, you can whatever you need, right? And for metrics, we're about to release that, so you can do it for both logs and metrics. Then does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
So again, if that part, like Michael, I don't know if you publish it, we might need to remove that because that's still in beta. So I trust that everyone on the call here can keep that to themselves, but it will come for metrics as well. Just so that we note to ourselves that we don't leak something that is in beta still.
Mm-hmm.
So you're all privileged whoever stuck around to learn that there will be a pipeline, not only for logs, but also for metrics. Any other question? Or comment if you have feedback, like if you say like, hey, this is missing, or you can only adopt it if X, Y, Z. Anything missing, anything that you would have wanted to discuss or see in action that you didn't see, or really anything, feedback. Yes, pipeline for metrics. A managed pipeline, right? That's the whole point. In OTel land, you would essentially use a gateway. Well, the canonical use cases.
Michael, I would say on the pipeline for metrics piece, probably since it's nothing's GA yet. I think we can pause that. So,
no. I'm not talking about metrics. I'm talking about the pipeline itself, which for logs is
okay, perfect.
Is GA. The canonical use case is you are a platform or infrastructure team and want to have central control at choke point where you might not have direct control, like you might have hundreds of internal teams, or you can't trust them, or you can't rely on them, or whatever. You don't have control over what the instrumentation there is, right? Like they just ingest whatever logs they want. And then with the pipeline, right, you have a central place where you say, whoa, before that goes into CloudWatch, we do certain things, right? We process them, we mask the PII data, we do tail sampling once it's available for traces, or we aggregate metrics once it's available for metrics, whatever, right? Whatever you as the platform or infrastructure team has in terms of policies, that might be compliance, it might be cost efficiency, all that, you could have a policy to say any logs that are shipped from dev test environments will not be ingested, right? And then, no matter what your developers do, it won't be ingested because you sit in front of the actual backend, right? And the same is true for any other telemetry signal, right? You have a central choke point that you control as the platform infrastructure team to do any kind of cleaning. Standardization, very often, if you have different instrumentation or not inconsistent instrumentation where you map various, if you adopt OTel semantic conventions, and not all of the teams might stick to them, you can say, okay, whatever you have here in terms of OTel metadata, of metadata coming in, it maps to this and this OTel semantic convention, so that once you ingest it, it all has the same structure, the same keys, etc., etc. That makes sense. Yeah, DevOps agent, sure. Cool. Thank you.
Perfect.
We have 2 more minutes, so at least 2 more questions possible.
All right. Now we can give.
When it works, yeah.
Yeah, you have to wait for GA, then we can have an official workshop. But reach out to your AWS contact, and we can get the right resources to help you get up and running on this. And after this call, I'll share details just to help you get started on your own. And like I said, feel free to reach out to your AWS contact, and we'll get the right help for you too.
And now is the time, right? Any feedback that you have, either directly to Michael or to the other Michael, or to your account team, TAM, SA, whatever you have, in terms of, it has to support XYZ, I need this integration, pricing, anything you have, now is the time, right? Once we go GA, pricing and stuff like that will be set in stone, or at least fixed. So now is the time. Please let us know. Yes, I would adopt it if, or it has these and these limitations, whatever. Hopefully today we kind of kicked up the conversation. You got a basic idea of what was that thing that we launched, the capabilities, where you can use it, and how it can help you. Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much for having me, Michael.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Have a good one. Bye now.
Thank you.